about what is really out there and what's going on. Culex mosquitoes feed at more specific times. The main mosquito that we have here is the Aedes mosquito, and it's the floodplain mosquito. And so Patrick, sitting here from Hotchkiss, I'm sure knows all about floodplain mosquitoes, because that's where you get all those fields out there, the flat fields, irrigated. As soon as you start irrigating those fields, you're going to start having Aedes mosquitoes, because they can lay their eggs in the mud, and they can stay viable in the mud for years and years and years.
Right, that's so fascinating.
Can Culex do that?
No, Culex need water. They lay their eggs in the water. The eggs hatch into larvae, and that's why we want to use more larvicides. Is the most effective way to control mosquitoes. Once they're flying around, you've lost the battle. But if you can kill the larva before they hatch into flying mosquitoes, you're in good shape.
So when you go around counting mosquitoes, how many traps are you looking at, and when you determine that you want to do something about them?
Well, that's part of the deal with counting, with identifying and counting the mosquitoes. There's a group, there's people that go out specifically to set the traps, and we set I don't know, what have we set, 7, 8, 6 maybe traps in a bunch of different locations twice a week. And then the traps, you catch the mosquitoes, then you put them in the freezer, they freeze to death and die. And that makes it easy for me to count them, because they dead. So you knock them out of the little can, and you put them on a piece of whiteboard, and I have a microscope, and you just separate them into their species and count them out. And then I pull the Culex. They're really identifiable. So I just pull those out. And we have 2 kinds here of Culex.
Really?
Yeah, we have Tarsalis and Pipiens. So, oh boy, we have a newcomer. Yay.
We do.
Awesome.
Greg is in the house. Good evening, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
All right. Can you hear us?
I can.
Okay.
Awesome.
Help me with your last name, Greg Rajnowski?
Rajnowski.
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 Okay. And you are with the Department of Environmental Health, or your position is?
I am the Director of Environmental Health for the Delta County Health Department.
All right. Super. So we're just chatting here about mosquitoes. Our gardener here, Lulu, has been involved with the mosquito district for many years. And we're talking about counting mosquitoes and the Culex type of mosquito, water in general, and excited to hear about your initiative that you're rolling out.
Yeah, me too.
Great. Well, that's tall order.
Walk
Here we
right
go.
into it, Greg.
So we have been, for many, many years, you probably know, have been collecting mosquitoes at North Fork and collecting mosquitoes at Delta County Mosquito Control District. However, until this year, Delta County Mosquito Control District were the only mosquitoes going to the state for testing for West Nile. Now, North Fork, Lulu,
we test our own,
has been testing their own, and using what's called a ramp test.
Yeah.
The state uses what's called a PCR, and this, in the last year, with the assistance of a lot of COVID-19 funding, purchased a Kingfisher, which does much more rapid testing of mosquito pools. So the return rate on getting the mosquito pools in and getting the data back out is going to be a lot quicker from here on out, now that they've increased their capabilities. So one of the things that I've talked to Mike Lawson with the district about is splitting your pools and getting some of your mosquitoes from your mosquito pools to get in there with the data set from the county, so that we get a more accurate picture of the
More
county-wide.
comprehensive. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
actually, I'm very, very pleased with the response and the number of people that have been really stepping up to kind of say, what can I do to get this going and get the word out. So Cedar Edge, we've had some communications with some of the trustees from Orchard City, and even Mike has reached out to somebody in Crawford who is interested in putting a trap out in the Crawford area. One of the things that we've noticed, or at least I've noticed since I've been here, and I've only been here for 3 years, so this is really my 3rd year here, and actually my second at really, getting the mosquito surveillance program to continue to get things into the state and get results back. But what's going to be different this year and is really trying to get a more accurate picture of the whole valley, of the whole county, because that small snapshot of just the city of Delta doesn't really give us a good picture. And what I've seen over the last couple of years is that small picture doesn't really give us a good window to get the warning out about West Nile. It doesn't give us an early enough picture of what West Nile is doing in the valley. So collecting mosquitoes from Crawford, collecting them from the Service Creek area, collecting them from North Fork and from Delta, hopefully will give us a little bit more early warning. Last year, our earliest case was in the Crawford area for human cases. Our second case was in the Service Creek area for human cases. So right there, it kind of tells us that we're missing the early season of the picture.
Right.
When we send our mosquito pools in and we don't get positive mosquito pools until mid-July, and we don't get human cases in the Delta area until mid-July, we start to wonder, are we getting the whole picture? So,
Well, that's exactly right. And you also have to remember that the reservoir for the virus is in the birds. So the birds moving, also transmit it back and forth. They get it. They move around a lot, obviously, a lot. And that's a good idea.
magpies, crows, ravens,
Yeah,
it's
what
the
are they called? The
corvids.
corvids, yeah.
And
Corvids, yeah.
they are busy this year.
They
Those
are
birds
super
are-
busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll give us a better early warning system. And then, after that, after we start to see them in the mosquito pools, we start to get a better idea of not only presence of the virus, but prevalence of the virus. Is it happening just still in one part of the county, or is it happening, are we starting to see it at the reservoir, in the Delta area, in the Service Creek area, in the Crawford area, and everywhere else? And then really getting the word out about prevention. And that's the repel, remove, repair, and remind. And that's repelling the mosquitoes when we go out, wearing clothes, using DEET or picaridin or lemon oil, eucalyptus, removing that standing water. And that's what the mosquito districts really fight is how do we treat water that's standing? How do we get people to remove the vector
exactly.
from their area?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your water moving. That's the key right there. If your ditches are clogged, if your tailwater from your field is hanging out on the side of the road in the cattails, you got a problem. And
Yeah.
it's hard to get the larvicide into some of those places. It's really hard.
Yeah, stinky stagnant water really is the stuff that Culex tarsalis and Culex pipiens, which are the main carriers of West Nile in our valley, like the most.
That's them, and they like a lot of organic matter, and obviously the water has to be still. It has to be still. A good rainstorm can wipe out a lot of the population because they can't get to the larva can't get to the surface to breathe.
Sure.
They breathe through a teeny tiny breathing tube, and they have to breathe. They live in the water, they swim in the water, they eat in the water, but they have to get to the surface to breathe about every minute and a half, just like us. So
Remove the standing water.
Yeah, I like that. Our thing.
Well, it's we're putting into each of the municipal town halls some of the information on West Nile to just give them a little bit more references, and then these wallet cards are really handy because on the back it's got those 4 R's, but it also has
the SWAT team. I like it.
Yeah, it also has some contact information there on where to get the rest of the information, because that doesn't take care of everyone's questions. So, but repairing mosquito netting or repairing screen doors, all it takes is one bite, and we've got the a story in one of our brochures that we have on West Nile of a case last year. A young gal who was contracted West Nile virus and had severe complications. And last year, we were really surprised at the number of neuroinvasive cases, the ones where the people that contracted West Nile virus developed developed encephalitis,
Yeah.
which is the neuroinvasive variety of West Nile. So that results in hospitalizations, severe neurological issues, and so we're struggling with seeing increasing numbers of severe cases, much more than we saw when the initial outbreak occurred. And then the last thing is just reminding people when you see them to remember dawn and dusk, and doing all those things that prevent contracting that one bite, because that's all it takes.
Yeah. So let's see, we've got a listener on the line. It's James, who has a comment about mosquitoes. So, hi, James.
How's it going?
Good.
Love the worm. I'm glad it's a full hour.
Well,
days.
we're glad to hear from you.
I just wanted to reinforce what Greg was saying and, put out kind of a quasi PSA, and just, an easy way to do this is, flip over your empty bucket, make sure you don't have any standing water around your property.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got a wet year, and so that's where mosquitoes breed and populate, and they got a very, very short lifespan, but we're coming into that time of the year where the breed that carries West Nile and Zika comes into fruition. And so, even the more simple areas that you may not think of in your garden, your water bucket, those little things, that's where, they're going to populate. And so I think what Greg's saying is real good. And I certainly hope everybody goes to the website. But, a mosquito control district in Delta, it's like 2.5% of the whole land mass
Right.
of the entire Delta County. So,
yeah, and your point is well taken. It's a 1/4 inch of water, standing water, is all they need to be able to lay those eggs. And the warmer the temperatures get, the more the QX variety starts to come out. So thanks for your support and your comment.
Absolutely. I hope
Thank you,
all
James.
goes well. I'm glad to hear the worm's on for an hour.
All right. Appreciate
All right,
you
thanks.
calling in.
Bye.
Bye.
He's just getting new habits, just like regular habits in his garden. Turning over the water bucket, dumping out whatever where the rain collects.
Yeah, I've always turned over my buckets, never left them standing. And I'm always long sleeved, a hat, long pants, and I'll use a natural mosquito control on my hands and face.
Right.
It's not a problem in the morning, it's a problem in the evening for me and my place.
Well, and there's different mosquitoes that bite at different times too. And the main the little Aedes mosquito is the one we have hugest numbers of. I mean, when I count mosquitoes, they win every time. And they're a nuisance. They just won't let you be. They keep coming around, and they're a real nuisance. They're persistent, and they light and bite, and that's our main one. The Culex is a little fussier about how it feeds and when it feeds, and it's evenings when it's cooler, and it's it's the mosquito. If it gets in your house, it's the one you hear at night.
Oh yeah, that's pesky.
The one, because it likes to feed later. But of course, adapt or die is the primary rule. So if you're out there and he's out there, only the females bite.
Right.
And she's out there, and it's 8:30, 7 o'clock, and they don't care. They're going to go for it.
Yeah. Now, Greg, in the past, I think that if you had a mosquito problem in your yard, you could call the mosquito district and maybe get some traps out there and just some assistance with treating that standing water or whatever situation you had going on. Is that still going on? Do you know?
So the case right now is we have 2 mosquito districts with defined boundaries. We have the Delta County. I keep saying Delta County. It's Delta Mosquito Control District number 1. Yeah, and so they will treat within their boundaries. Now they're great people, Terry and Carol, that are working there right now to kind of count and do the surveillance, and they're working with Cedar Edge and Orchard City to really set up some traps there and expand into that area to at least get some base numbers to see if we, we may not even have a problem in that area with Culex, or we may not have a problem with West Nile in that area. So we're going to do that this year, see how that goes, and that'll give them a little bit more idea about the numbers of mosquitoes they're seeing and whether or not they do have a West Nile virus presence in that area. Altitude may change. Mosquitoes change with altitude, so this is our chance to find that out. Now, the North Fork Mosquito District has boundaries as well, and they'll treat within those. The primary treatment technique is larviciding, or larvicide early, get rid of the larvae. That way they don't grow into adults. Exactly. Once you get big blooms of adult mosquitoes, you need to do, different things to knock those down. They'll use other treatment methods to knock those down, preferably, larviciding as a primary, because that's the most effective and least toxic method to do it. BTI, which is the Bacillus thuringiensis Israelis, which is the naturally occurring bacteria, really does a great job of getting rid of larvicide. And we've actually got mosquito dunks that we're handing out at the health department. You can come and get those. We're going to be dropping some of those off. Actually meeting with Hotchkiss on Thursday to see if we can leave some of those there for people to pick up. But I know that Cedar Edge is handing out dunks. You can get those at your hardware store. That BTI is really effective. Now, they also have it in a granular form. It looks like crushed, crumbled corn that you hand to your chickens. And
it
in
actually
fact,
is corn husks.
It actually, yeah. And so that treatment on the corn husk there, that you can spread just like fertilizer into those lower areas to get rid of it. And the great thing about that too is if it dries out and then rehydrates, it still is effective
vital,
for up to at least 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah,
So-
and there's some that's effective for
longer. Yeah.
long times.
You can get cakes of BTI if you got large ponds that have still water moving in them. Those BTI cakes, you can get them online. The brand name is Mosquito Dunks, but there's other types that you'll find in the hardware store. And actually, I've got a photo I took of Ace Hardware. They have many different types of things that you can use to take care of them. But they're not. It's not always what people think, which is using pesticides and things with like high permethrin concentrations that you use on to get rid of other pests in your yard. So these are really effective methods to get rid of those larvae early in the season, and then we're off and running.
Right. There's also a garlic spray that I don't know if NF Mat is still using it. North Fork Mosquito Abatement District is still using it, but it's super effective. And there's granules you can put in your grass and your foliage that will repel mosquitoes as well. I have Vinca vine all over the front side of my house, the front and both sides, east and west. I don't have a lawn. Mosquitoes love it. It's cool. It's wet. They go in there and hang out, and then when I'm in the garden in the afternoon, here they come, you know. But it's hardly ever Culex mosquitoes. I swat them and take them into the house and go and look and see what I got, you know. Why wouldn't I?
If you know how to do that, you can definitely do
Yeah.
that. You know, and one of the things to remember too is there's a lot of plants that are also natural repellents for mosquitoes too. So you plant those in your garden, and you can go online and get that information. You know, and the one of the other things to remember is just, you know, that repelling. There's a lot of different ways to do that. So it's not you know, just using noxious chemicals. So.
Yeah, that's the truth.
There's all kinds of good recipes out there.
There are tons, yeah, and it's mostly the goal is take care of yourself. You know, if you start to feel like there's mosquitoes around because it's cooled down, it's dusk, they can't live in the searing heat of the day, so they hide out and they wait till it cools and then they come out.
What do you use, Lance?
What do I use?
Yeah, use a neutral.
I bought it at the health food store here. I forget the name of it.
Probably some essential oil or...
It's essential oil stuff that works pretty good.
It works pretty good.
Most of your basic things have citronella in them.
Yeah, citronella, peppermint, lemongrass,
Yeah.
a lot of
All
those.
of those, all sweet, great smelling stuff. Why wouldn't you want to smell like that? It's great.
Yeah, it is pretty nice smelling
You know?
stuff these days.
I mean, if you have to go out and if you have to use repellents, there's, you know, unfortunately, DEET is one of the most effective ones, but there are, it's terrible, and I taste it in my mouth as soon as I use it. So I tend to use the non-DEET type products. I'm a picaridin, and picaridin is a botanical that actually is a synthetic botanical, but it's very useful to use, and it's not as noxious as DEET. And if you are going to use DEET, the one thing I would recommend is if you have children, just use the lower concentrations of DEET, generally in the 20% range. I know there are some outdoor DEETs that have about 25. That's about as high as you want to go until their teenage years, because they tend to be a little more sensitive to higher concentrations of DEET.
And if you're thinking that wearing a shirt, or like Lance says, a long sleeve shirt or something, you've got to get it on your clothes, because they can bite right through.
I actually have a T-shirt on.
See?
Underneath.
I have two layers.
But
But you can treat your clothing and your
Yeah, you can.
jackets with
Absolutely.
permethrin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good repellent, and it's not on your skin then.
Yeah,
No,
I like that.
and it works.
That
Yeah.
option.
So there's a lot of things you can do, and it's worth it to do them for sure. Although, you know, we have to say that most people that contract West Nile probably won't have any serious symptoms. It's rare to get that sick. But, you know, if you're that person,
Yeah.
It was
it's a
really
real
complicated when we had COVID and flu.
Right.
And sometimes we'll have a late flu season. So I think it was 2021, we had COVID, we had the beginnings of like a little bit, we weren't sure exactly whether or not flu was going to arrive. And then we had the potential for West Nile and a lot of those symptoms. But what's really important is if your muscles are aching and if you're starting to feel feverish, go get checked out. The season generally starts early June, so you can bet once mosquitoes are starting to come out, that's the time when you should be asking, and let your physician know, hey, I've been outdoors, I've been rafting, I've been, doing all these outdoor activities. It could be COVID, but if you get a negative COVID test, West Nile is a pretty likely suspect if it's QLEX season. So you want to mention that. It's quite often, even your physicians might say, well, it seems like I ran into a guy last weekend who said the doctor told him he had a sinus infection, and they went and did a West Nile virus test and found out he had the positive West Nile. So something to remember that, you want to be a little more conversive about your symptoms. And it's really hard to remember. Sometimes you feel feverish, but you don't check to see if you had a fever. So it's hard to know. And that's one of the classic fever and headache, along with an IgM positive, which is the immunoglobulin positive that gives you that clinical definition of what West Nile is for a physician. So it's good to have that conversation with your physician.
How do you get treated? How do they treat it?
It's not treatable. It's not curable. So the most important thing is prevent it.
Is don't get it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And that's our 4 R's right there.
Right there, right. And like I said, you don't need to panic. Most people don't have severe reactions.
Right. I think that if you are feeling symptoms, it's better to
go and
to
figure
get
it
checked
out.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Because then
sure.
at least and then you can take care of yourself. And
The rate of neuroinvasive last year was much higher than what we expected to see, and I know Montrose had 6 deaths last year. We had 2. Montrose had over 30 neuroinvasive hospitalized
Wow.
cases,
Oh, my
and we had.
goodness.
I have the
That's a good
report
number.
on our website if you want to see the short report. You can click on that. We have comparisons to the last 5 years for Mesa and Montrose, and you can kind of see what those rates are, and they're a little higher than we expected to have last year.
Yeah, glad to see the comprehensive data coming together. So is that deltacountyhealthdepartment.org? It's kind of a long website.
Yeah, it is
here,
kind of.
but maybe
It's
we can just-
www.deltacountyco.gov. We've become a .gov now.
Okay.
So anybody that's
Whoa.
used to the .com, it'll still end up at the co.gov, but it's deltacountyco.gov, and then we have those weird URLs. But if you just go to there and go to the environmental health page and look down on the left-hand side, it'll say West Nile, join the SWAT team, and you can.
can we have some of these cards to keep here?
Yes, you can. I'll
would
leave
be
the
awesome.
small stack here. We can always drop off more. I've got
I think that would be a great thing.
environmental health specialists that are running out here all the time. So inspecting
perfect.
restaurants.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about it last week. You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah,
And you've
you
got to
do.
develop good
Yeah.
habits around these little critters. So,
Yeah.
Greg from the Delta County Environmental Health Division, thanks so much for coming in and reminding us the importance of watching out for mosquitoes.
Thanks so much. It's good to meet you all.
Good to be here. And Patrick?
Let's do it again. You want to?
Yeah, we'd love to hear
Because
how
there's
this
so
data
much
starts
to
to
know,
come
and
back.
I mean, I
Yeah,
would
happy
love
to come back and give you a
Cool.
mid-season update.
That'd be good.
Hopefully there won't be much to update you on.
That would be,
That would be
good
awesome.
news, yeah. And Patrick Webb, our Hotchkiss Town trustee. I'm sure you've got some stuff going on there in Hotchkiss, and thanks for your efforts there.
You bet.
All right, we're going to hear from a couple of our underwriters, and go to your phones, 970-527-4868-866. KVNF Now. We'll be right back.
Support for KVNF comes from Lily and Rose Home Furnishings in Delta, where 4 generations have furnished Colorado homes for over 90 years. Their 30,000 square foot showroom features American-made furniture, framed art, area rugs, and restoration.